I'm gonna leaving home.
It's about talking about a segment of one of the parts of our plan. We're going to have 6 or 7 of these conversations about different areas. We started with Ditto because, quite frankly, it was one of the most asked for areas. They said, what can we do with our riverfront? How can we make it more attractive? How can we do something that stimulates the city? And so we said, well, let's get together and let's let everybody talk about it and come away with a plan. So tonight, I hope that you'll be able to have some input. Everybody's going to have a chance to have input. This is not a preaching situation where you get preached at, then you get to go home. This is everybody participates, so there will be participation. There are no right or wrong answers tonight. Everybody has a chance to say everything they want to, and there are no right or wrong answers. There's just the idea that we need to start building a plan. And a plan doesn't come from Dennis, doesn't come from our planning staff, who is all throughout here. That plan has to come from the people. The people have to be part of that plan, and you have to have buy-in on that plan. For it to happen right, everybody has to have buy-in. So that's why you're here, that's why we're talking, that's why we want to have a good conversation with a plan tonight. And tonight we hope to start talking about vision and feasibility, because both sides of vision and feasibility are portions of what happens tonight. We have to talk about vision, we have to talk about feasibility. Feasibility is what we face every year. Right now we're in the budget times of the city, and every time you get into budget times, you have this much need and then this much resources. So now we start talking about visions, priorities, what's more important than other things, how we work to make sure that we have our priorities right, that we have a vision, that we also have a feasible plan, something that's feasible that can work over the long term. And tonight is not just about Ditto Landing. It's about the entire riverfront that we have down here. So we need to discuss the entire riverfront and keep in mind that this is portions of everything. So it goes way down here and way back here. And Dennis will be approaching some of that. And one of the final things I want to say, your presence here makes sure that we have a plan. So thank you for being part of this. Thank you for making sure that this community comes away. We come away with something that makes some sense, that has some feasibility. It won't all be made tonight. It won't all come in tonight, but this is our time to sit down and talk about the future and where we need to go. I'm going to turn it over to Dennis Madison. Dennis is head of planning. Dennis, do you want to recognize your staff real quick? Everybody in planning, raise your hand who's here, because we have a number of our planning staff here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank y'all all for coming out and being part of this. David Elisser, thanks for the setup here from Parks and Recreation. And Dennis, you're on. Thank you.
Thanks y'all for coming out again. I want to echo what the mayor said. I'm actually kind of surprised at how many folks we got, given the fact that I know it was raining in a lot of other places. I thought that would put kind of a literal and figurative damper on what we're doing. I'm so glad you all came down. This is really, really exciting time for us. Hope you forgive some of the bugs and hiccups. This is our first Citizen Academy, so we're going to work through some of the things as we go on. But there is one thing I do want to do. I thank the mayor for recognizing my staff, but there's a few folks, your representatives who are here. Phil Riddick, who's really been leading the charge. Phil, you around? You're commissioner for this district. He's been, there he is. He's outside of my very limited peripheral vision. And then also John Olszewski, who, this was kind of my snafu. We were trying to figure out the perfect date for Ditto. Tuesday the 24th seemed like it made a whole ton of sense. And then after we got it all scheduled, we realized it's Planning Commission meeting night. So John is actually up there. He sends his regrets. He really wanted to be here. He has been a big proponent of smart growth and planning and outreach since the first day I came. He was one of the first people to meet with me. So I'm sad that he couldn't be here, but I'm glad all the rest of you could. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do a quick agenda. We're going to talk first. I do talk long. I apologize. It's just the way I am. I'm going to try and knock this out in less than 30 minutes, but I want to make sure everyone kind of gets a few basic points. One is, what is the layout of the riverfront today? What are the things that are happening? What's programmed down here? What are some of the constraints? What are some of the opportunities? We're going to talk specifically about a few things that are challenges for growth. What are the things that prevent us from building X, Y, or Z? What are the things that are physical challenges or regulatory challenges that we need to deal with or that we need to consider in our planning? and then go through some of the past ideas and some of the opportunities that we have, some of the things that we can really build upon to realize a future vision for the riverfront. And then if I talk fast enough, we're going to break out into table sessions. And I'm probably, given how y'all are clustering, and I'm going to blame the TV cameras for this, we may do a little bit of musical chairs and move you around into more workable groups. And each table is going to have a facilitator. That's someone who's going to guide the discussion. No ideas of their own, but really just sort of help you through some of the steps in order to kind of create your own master plan at each of your tables. And we'll talk a little bit more about that through here. So Riverfront today, I want to do a little orientation. Even I sometimes have trouble reading aerials, but this is Ditto Landing in the riverfront from the air. You can see the little dots in the middle. That is the marina. We're basically sitting right there. The bridge, 431, the parkway is going right over the parkway going right over the top. Hobbs Island Road is coming down on the other side. That is the side as is, and obviously the Tennessee River moving diagonally across. I think what a lot of folks don't realize is how big the Ditto Marina Authority is. It's 569 acres. I think a lot of folks look at it and they see the marina, they see the pavilion, they might see the bridge and some of the campgrounds scattered around, but it's a very, very big piece of property for which the authority is responsible, and it actually extends north and east of Hobbs Island Road. So there's a lot of property out there. There's a lot of flexibility and things that we can do. I think a lot of folks who use Ditto regularly would probably had no idea that there was actually that much property, which means there's a lot of potential. To give you a little more orientation, again, this is 231 and Memorial Parkway and the bridge. Come on through. It's all right. There's Hobbs Island Road running down basically through the property. But the marina property isn't the only property in play potentially. The city has roughly 172 acres on the other side of the bridge. Very low-lying land, kind of tough to deal with, but it is a lot of land. It's open, it's undeveloped. There is work that could happen there. We could actually connect potentially underneath the bridge and link those two. There's also a lot of developed land already around the site. At Union Carbide, residential farther up on the mountain, obviously our sewage treatment plant, and just farther down, I think a lot of folks don't realize there's Whitesburg Marina a little farther down the shoreline. But there's also a lot of undeveloped land. You can kind of see the purple there. A lot of areas, many, many acres surrounding, even across the river. And as we start getting into this discussion, I do want you to consider every piece of property around the riverfront, including across the river. Not saying you're going to draw a ton of development on there, but consider how this side of the river may link to the other side of the river and how those uses may cooperate. We also have, I think anyone, I know Mr. Cousins is certainly aware of the Aldrich Creek Greenway. This is one of the most popular segments of the Greenway system in the city. A lot of people cite this when we go out and talk to them. This is one of their favorite amenities. Basically comes right down and cuts along Hobbs Island Road for a bit and then empties out along the riverfront. You can actually ride your bike along the riverfront. It's a beautiful bike ride, but as you can kind of get the sense, it pretty much dead ends down there on Hobbs Island Road. So you come to an end and you've either got to get out on the road or turn back around. So there's potential in the future for how we create connections. And I think I saw some folks from the Arsenal here. We just drew this as sort of a wish list as a potential connection, even connecting Greenway all the way to Wheeler along Arsenal frontage. That's sort of dreaming big, maybe a little unrealistic, but cross that bridge when we get to it. But there are other potential links. You could run it down the other direction, looping all the way around to New Hope and eventually linking up to Hayes Nature Preserve to begin to create this network, this broad network of greenway trails, which are great for recreation. They're extremely popular. They're great for transportation, and they are a great public amenity. We've also got, I believe it's the Spacewalk Trail that connects up to Land Trust land just to the north and east. There is the potential really to create a hub, almost a greenway hub, down in the Ditto and Riverfront area that links you to multiple parts of the city through multiple routes. One part we actually didn't show is the Huntsville-Madison County Railroad line, that you could run a Rails and Trails program up there. There are a lot of options here, and a lot of that is going to be on your shoulders to talk about what you think is important, what you think you would really like to see. As again, we mentioned the railway. It is active. It's not heavily used, but it is used, and I know the Huntsville Madison County Railroad Authority would like to continue to use it, but there are a lot of precedents out there for rails and trails programs where you can have greenways along an active rail network. I personally, just as a planner, think this is a great potential home run. You could link all the way to downtown in a fairly straightforward manner, but again, that's something to discuss at your tables. See if that's something that you think might be of interest. This is something I think is very important to keep in mind, is topography. The ASL is above sea level. The highest point on Ditto property is a little hill just basically roughly to the north and east of us at 850 feet above sea level. Well, the river's at about 556. So that's almost 300 feet of elevation change between the river and one of the highest points around it. That is a lot of climb. Now, there's some great opportunity in that, but if you start kind of doing some programming on your site and you say, would like to do a soccer field or something like that, probably appropriate down here, probably a little more difficult up there. And at the same time, you know, say you want to do a climbing site or a zip line site, probably a little more feasible up there, a little less so down in the plains. But definitely keep that in mind as you start looking at how you're going to program your group's master plan. I want to walk, for those of you who haven't been down here much, just a few photographs of the trestle bridge just beyond the T. I do want to mention there are plans from ALDOT, at least as I understand them, that goes away and we create another concrete T that operates in the other direction. A few folks, as we've started our discussion, have mentioned, you know, could we do a Chattanooga? Could we take that bridge over and create a bike ped bridge that goes across the river? That's something, that's obviously time and effort and some dialogue with ALDOT. But if we think that's a priority, if your table thinks that's a priority, then that's a discussion that we want to have. This is a shot from across the river, a little closer. You are there. This is the marina internally. More shots of the marina. This is a shot of the trestle bridge from the marina. Actually, as you can see it now, and you know why we risked the weather to have this here. There are some really, really striking views from all along this property and from all along the riverfront. And this is the part of the Greenway I mentioned where you actually pop out onto the riverfront and you can ride your bike. I didn't know that until about a month ago, that was down here. And that's fantastic that you can ride your bike along there. Again, this is the pavilion where we are. These are the campgrounds I mentioned. Probably do want to address your campgrounds as you're working on the table. You may say we don't need campgrounds. You may want to expand them. It may be worth revisiting where those campgrounds are. The civil engineer who's part of the Ditto board has mentioned that of all the places that flood in Ditto Landing property, that's one of the first ones that floods, which I don't know how many of you are campers out there, but I understand that that's actually not an ideal situation for camping. So that may be something you want to revisit. Do you build up that site a little more, or do you relocate the campsites someplace else? And this is the Aldrich Creek Greenway connection. Obviously, very popular link, gets you right down here. It's an incredible connection that we may be able to build off of. A few of the challenges I do want to mention, again, floodway and floodplain. Floodway, not buildable. All right, anything you see on there, you're going to have to stay out of, and there's a fair amount of it, obviously, with the river and with Aldrich Creek. Floodplain, we are in a lot of floodplain down here, not really surprising. A lot of it, not just from the river, but from the fact that we're at the bottom end of the topography, and we've got a lot of water running down onto the riverfront site. That does not mean it's not buildable. It just means you have to build with discretion. You can elevate, you can bring in fill, you can have buildings in the floodplain. We are in one right now, but it is something that you want to be strategic about. Obviously, it's a discussion, again, at your table. That's something you want to talk about. As well as zoning, nothing phenomenally restrictive. We are C5 in this piece of property, but there are some kind of non-standard restrictions on the Ditto property, at least on this side of Hobbs Island Road. Everyone says, why isn't there a restaurant here? Why don't they do something commercial here? We're actually not allowed, per an agreement with the federal government, to have a commercial restaurant type endeavor on this side of the road. We could do it on the other side, but not on this side. That's a discussion we need to have. It could be that we can operate without that. If you think it's really important, we can actually go to DC and have that discussion and see if we can revisit the agreement, but it's kind of a balance of where do we want to spend our time and effort and how do we want to address that.
Which road?
Hobbs Island Road, it's all the Ditto property. On the other side of Hobbs Island Road, you can do it. Everything on this side of Hobbs Island Road, you cannot.
What is that agreement based
I haven't the foggiest idea, quite frankly. That'd be a great question for the lady. Oh, wait a minute. Wally Kirkpatrick's right there and he can tell you.
That was the target of the condition of us getting the land originally from, and it's a restriction of Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm an extraordinarily optimistic person. I think we have sufficient political clout in Washington to get that removed, but it is an obstacle that has to be removed, so be aware of that.
All right, thank you, Wally. I appreciate that. And one thing I did neglect to do at the very beginning, there are a lot of folks from Ditto and the Ditto board here. Wally as a chair is one of them. I won't make you stand up again. Keith is trying to hide behind there. Keith Mandel's here. I think we've got a few other members. Any other members, just raise your hand real quickly so things can be thrown at you. There's Paul, and we've got other folks from, let's see, where is that? There you go. All right, I'm back. So we've got members of Ditto here, so we can't go too far afield because they'll rein us in. But that is one of the concerns of the piece. We can address that. We could always get around it. You know, Wally, the optimist, says we can. But again, these are the resources of our time and effort that you may want to consider when you're planning your version of Ditto. One other thing that you definitely will want to address, or actually we're going to ask that you address at each of your tables, is connectivity to the site. Right now, I think you probably all saw that little trestle bridge right out here. You cannot drive or walk on that. That's a condemned bridge. As a result, that's restricted an access point into Ditto Landing. At the same time, you've really got, Hobbs Island Road, not a huge road, and the entranceway, there's one entrance into Ditto. It's a 2-lane road. If you get excessive flooding, I think anyone who's been down here when it's flooded, you cannot get into or out of Ditto when that's become impassable. So we want to talk about how do we improve access, not just to Ditto, but to the riverfront in general. It may be via a new road or an expanded road or a widened road or what have you. It may be by additional greenways. It may be by a combination of those things. But that's something that we really, really want you all to address at your tables. Just figure out what are some other ways we can actually get into the site. So one question, Dave?
Is Ditto Landing city property or Madison County property? Or
It is an authority, actually, and since I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to tell you exactly what that means, but we can have someone come by and do it. Oh, there's Wally. Wally. Oh, there we go. Wally, you just keep that.
Thank you for coming out tonight and participating. We're very excited about potential opportunities at Ditto. The question of, what all can be done here, etc., is open for discussion. We do absolutely have to have improved access across here, roads, etc. So, what other question was there?
That was what technically is Ditto's ownership?
The property, the Madison County Marina Port Authority was created jointly in an act of the legislature under the auspices of the city of Huntsville and Madison County. The board is governed by a 5-person board. 2 are appointed by the city, 2 are appointed by the county, and 1 member is appointed jointly between those 2 bodies. The land here is actually the property of the Huntsville Madison County Marina Port Authority. The institution of the Port Authority is established by state statute so that it has the full authority of any organization that can issue bonds or whatever. So it's a very comprehensive statute that created Ditto Landing.
There we go. That was a fairly comprehensive answer. Thank you, Wally. I'd actually, hold on a second. So we can actually get to the planning. I want to hold the questions until the end. Otherwise, we're gonna get caught in. I'm sure all of this will have to do with the planning, but I really do want to get through this and respect everyone's time and actually get to the workshop piece. So let me blow through this. If you've got a question, come and grab me at the end. But I do want to get through some of the ideas, some of the stuff that's come out previously. This was a plan done back in the early 90s. You can see fairly ambitious to the point it actually added a second marina, added some what it called riverside residential community, even some commercial up along Hobbs Island Road. So clearly there has been some thought in the past on what actually you could do down here, and there have been some fairly big ideas, but we haven't yet been able to carry them forward. Here it's zoomed out a little bit to the point where you're actually connecting to the southern bypass, if anyone remembers that. So clearly there was a lot of thought about what more could go down here. There was even a golf course involved in the past. The Hobbs Island itself had been looked at potentially as a recreation area or some sort of educational site. And I think some folks may know Scott McLean, local developer, had this thesis of doing kind of a trolley line where you could actually ride a trolley up and down the Madison County Railroad Authority spur all the way from downtown down to here. It could carry folks down for the day. I think that's something worth discussing. It's certainly something we can revisit if enough folks find that compelling. To give you an example, you can actually do rails and trails in a fairly narrow right-of-way. This is from the Atlanta Beltline. They have two two rail lines and a trail in 70 feet of right-of-way, and a lot of the Huntsville-Madison County Railroad right-of-way is wider than that. So it is something that's feasible. Don't feel like you're thinking too pie in the sky if that's something that you want to pursue. But then some of the other things that came up, and again, some of these you may just go, oh no, please don't, but just throwing a lot of the ideas out there, whether or not it's a resort, an amphitheater. We went down to the Tuscaloosa Amphitheater and saw something similar. It's come up for a number of discussions. The reason I showed this particular picture as opposed to other ones is I kind of love the idea of a floating amphitheater just because it's a little not like other places. And at one point we also said if you don't like the band, you just cut the rope and let them float away to Decatur, and you know then you have no problems. But it's that kind of thing. You know, think as you get into the planning. Don't be afraid to think a little bit, you know, off kilter. Think about something that maybe you've seen that no one else has seen before. A water park, maybe it's a big water park, maybe it's a little small water park, but it's something else that's come up. There are obviously precedents for baseball parks on waterfronts. A public beach has come up a lot. There's some challenges, especially with the rate of flow. The Tennessee River at this point is pushing a lot of water to the point if you swim a little farther out from shore at this point, you're going to end up in Decatur before you can swim back. It's moving a lot of water. So how we might do that is something that we really want to look at in detail. Cabin rentals, especially if you look at some of the elevation to the north and east of us. I've compared this to a few folks. This to Montesano State Park in terms of what Ditto, how Ditto could really approach, the riverfront could approach redevelopment. When you look at Montesano State Park, there's a lot of people move through there, but at times you really wouldn't notice it. But it's got a lot of different pieces of program. It's got camping, it's got a lodge, it's got hiking trails, it's got biking, it's got playgrounds, it's got picnics, all this stuff. Some pieces appeal to some folks, some pieces appeal to others, but they all work together to really create this area where everyone can use. They have people from out of state, they have people from in-state, people from in-town, all who go there on a regular basis. And thinking that way and thinking about how you can vary the program along the riverfront is a good way to also potentially increase the activity down here. Zipline courses, this was one that I think came up at an AL.com leadership discussion. I find that terrifying personally, but other folks like it. And my understanding is there isn't a similar course anywhere near. Some of y'all may know that there is one, if there is one close by. They're very popular as I understand it. But that's something to consider. Likewise, a ropes course, obviously kayak and canoe rental is an option for the don't mind it noisy crowd, jet skis, or do mind it noisy crowd, the paddle boat rental. Lot of options here. I know paddle boards are something that have been discussed. I never understood standing up on something and poling it along, but apparently that's very popular too. Also potentially a rental, especially in some of the quieter water along Aldrich Creek, might be feasible. And then I think we mentioned already the idea potentially of being a Greenway hub. of having multiple connections from multiple points of the city coming here and really serving as a recreation and greenway hub for folks. This was one that I thought someone mentioned in another session, very compelling, the idea of creating a pedestrian bridge out to Hobbs Island or a ped bike bridge. Again, just something to think about. You may know of another program that you went to a marina or a beachfront or something in the past and you saw something really cool. Or say you're a rower and you're keen on a regatta or something bigger like that. Share that, work that into the conversation. I think, as you know, this is a very big site. It's a very big riverfront. A lot of things can go in here. A lot of things can work together to really embrace what happens along the riverfront. Here's a bunch of others. Some folks, and I want to give a nod to the crowd. There's some folks, I've been coming to Ditto for 30 years. I love it the way it is. It needs a little bit of spit and polish, but otherwise just don't mess with it. Maybe a few other slips. It's okay to have that conversation. Talk about that if you want to. Talk about just doing more of the same. We just want an expanded marina and more hiking trails. That's okay too. But it's going to be up to your table to really have that discussion. All sorts of different opportunities here. You don't have to limit them to this. They obviously don't have to include any of this if you don't want it to, but have that discussion at your table. With that, it is going to be your turn. Wow, there are a lot of folks. Sir?
So you said back in 2009, you had some extensive plans there that I saw. So 2 questions. What were the roadblocks that you had, and why didn't you guys go forward with any of those plans? Question 1.
Okay.
And then question 2 is, what's your plan of what we do here today and in the future?
That anticipates one of, that first one I can't answer because it was actually in the 90s, and it was before I got here. The second one I can answer actually in a later slide. So that's why hold your questions. All will be answered. So now it's your turn. There's a few things that we're going to want to walk through, but we ended up dribbling a lot more people in here than I anticipated. So we're going to figure out how to separate you. We have facilitators. All the facilitators, please raise your hand right quick so I get a sense. All right, we're going to spread you around. If we can't fit you all at these tables, we actually have some tables over in the breakout segment there. I'll probably ask folks to spread out a little bit, and then we'll kind of lay down the maps. But we're basically going to talk about working with the facilitator, how we actually want you to draw. We don't want to kind of do it willy-nilly. There's a little bit of method to our madness. The first is a land use key. Your facilitator is going to have a land use key that basically, if you talk about wanting to put a restaurant or some recreation area or some cabins, they kind of match a color in our marker set. And it makes it a little easier for us to understand what you guys are planning if those colors actually match. So they're going to go through that. They're going to go through, if we want a greenway in a certain area, how do we draw it on the plan? If we want a new road or anything in a certain area, how do we draw it on the plan? I do want to encourage you, as a group, cover these things with notes, cover them with color, really be aggressive, look at everything on there, and really be optimistic and ambitious in your thinking. Again, the must-haves. 1, we really want you to look at, when you're done with your master plan, how have you improved connection to the riverfront? How have you actually created better links, not just to Ditto, but to all the riverfront property? It could be roads, it could be greenways, it could be a combination of those two. It could be something else that I haven't even thought of. And we do want you to add program. Even if you don't want to change Ditto, figure out are there other areas around that could become something else, that add more campgrounds or that become a water park or something like that. And we do want you to look at every piece. We want you to make sure that even across the river, you don't have to draw anything there, but at least say, hey, what can we think might fit there? On the city property, on the other side of the bridge, what might go there? So look at every piece. You don't have to plan every piece, but do try to look and consider how all those things fit together. If you can, and this isn't a must, come up with kind of a big idea, sort of a central theme, whether or not it's family recreation or fishing or camping. Come up with a big idea that's sort of a unifying theme. It could be new, some new program or something that's existing. Again, we want you to think kind of ambitiously. And then we're going to ask you at the very end, because I'm not going to be the only one to speak of this thing, we're going to ask each group at the end to elect a spokesperson. And it cannot be the facilitator. It has to be one of your group to stand up, and you'll draft 2 other folks to kind of hold up your plan, and you are going to tell the rest of the crowd, at least the crowd that's remaining, what it is that you want to see and what you wanted to do and what your big ideas were and how you got there. So you can actually kind of talk through a fair number of pieces and share everything with the rest of folks. Talk about what it is, talk about some of the rationale that you had. And then before you go, I'm going to tell you about what we plan to do with it. We're going to take a lot of these, we're going to work with the Ditto board, take a lot of your ideas, figure out, run them through a little bit more of a feasibility filter, get an idea of staging, and work with them to create kind of a draft master plan. And we've actually got an idea. I know it's not possible for everyone to get out on a weeknight like this, so we're going to follow this up with an online survey, take some of the ideas that came out of it, do an online survey for folks who couldn't come, say, hey, which of these elements resonates with you? What do you think is really popular? And then what we'd really like to do is, in concert with the Ditto board, distill this down to a draft master plan where they can actually take this plan and start implementing things. Some things in the short term, some things in the long term, but things that Ditto can do itself really to realize the vision that I think folks want to see. Related to some stuff beyond Ditto, we're starting focus groups in July. I hope everybody here is getting the newsletter. Everyone is getting the newsletter. If you're not, we'll tell you how. But we're going to start doing the focus groups in July on transportation greenways. Those are going to roll through the summer. We're going to do some more Citizens Academy like this on economic development and on transportation in summer and fall. Please stay connected. If you didn't have a good time at this one, I'm sorry, but please come out to other ones as well. If you did, come out to more. Going to talk a little bit about community investment, aging in place, all those things. Please, please, please stay engaged. This is the best way if you haven't been on the website yet, bigpicturehuntsville.com. For the Twitter crowd, there's your hashtag. You can go there, you can sign up for the focus groups, you can sign up for the newsletter. You can keep up to date on all the events and all the different things we've got going on.